The most challenging thing to the Jewish people in America and the West in general is assimilation and intermarriage.
I love that we assimilate, and I think that I personally view that as a good thing.
I feel like my Jewish identity is strongest when I'm resisting assimilation because I have to affirm my identity by being traditional.
Our most ancient texts are literally Jews arguing with each other.
I would love to see a future in American Judaism beyond Zionism.
When I think about the history of Jews in America, I have to appreciate that this is a very diverse community that has been here since before the US was even founded. There have been long-standing debates within the Jewish community about not just religious rituals and social practices, but what it means to be Jewish in the American context. So what do these different points of view have to say about the future of Jews in America and where this diverse community is going? To better inform myself, I've invited a handful of young Jews from across New York City to sit and have a meal at Patisse, a hip kosher cafe in Brooklyn.
So I'm a scholar of religion, and most people think I know everything there is to know about religion, which is not true. And what I'm hoping in this conversation is I could just learn more through the lived experience piece, right? Like not just history, but what is life like for Jewish people in this country today? And so just to start out, and this is sort of an open question, and feel free to jump in wherever you'd like. Just would love to hear some of you reflect on how you see the current status of Jews in America today.
I think it's become very politicized. I think given what's going on in the Middle East, I think that it's become harder to navigate being in America, being in New York as a Jew. A lot of people assuming what your assumptions or stances are. And more than that, I think the polarization that's happened in the United States in the last bunch of years, I'm very grateful to say that I didn't really grow up with experiencing anti-Semitism. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. My dad grew up getting beat up in the streets of New York City wearing a yarmulke. But me, I never really experienced anything until 3 years ago when someone screamed, "Hail Hitler," out the car window. And that's something that I've been seeing with the rise of swastikas and really being identified from strangers on the street as a Jew in a way that hasn't happened in my entire childhood.
Religious tolerance in America is one of the main reasons why Jewish people came to this country. And there's this trend between democracy and Jewish presence, and it's just because we want to exist in peace. And so when you ask the question about the current state of Jews today, we've been facing a lot of persecution. Anti-Semitism, it's skyrocketed almost 1,000% in the past decade in America. Around the world, the numbers are frightening. And we've known from our grandparents' story, from our own history, that when anti-Semitism skyrockets and increases, that means that wherever it's happening, there's some sort of value shift. There's some sort of value shift amongst the people, and that value shift is moving from a democratic value shift into something else.
I also think it's relevant that America is a nation of outsiders, of people who, didn't fit in wherever else they were. And that has been, unfortunately, a role that Jews played throughout our history in exile, of being the one who's different from the dominant society. But in America, it's a nation of immigrants, and in a way, we're no less of an immigrant or no more of an immigrant than anyone else. It is not just that the U.S. has given opportunities to Jews, but that Jewish people have been part of shaping what the U.S. has been. Aspects of the Constitution and American culture are inherently based on Judeo-Christian values. American culture, the movie industry was created all by Jewish immigrants, and that has gone a long way to creating the pop culture of how America is perceived and how we see ourselves. Even a song like "God Bless America" was written by Irving Berlin, who is a Jewish immigrant from Russia.
Bells too.
Yeah, classic Christmas song. So, Christmas song. So, ironically, so much of American identity was shaped by immigrants who were Jewish. So I think that, Jewish culture is a part of the fabric of American culture.
I think this is true for a lot of especially Ashkenazi Jews who are, European and white, is that they were able to assimilate into the larger scheme of whiteness in this country and reap the benefits of being able to not be outwardly ethnic and pass, so to speak, or gain access to higher education, gain access to amassing wealth and, to create like better lives for their children, but also just take advantage of like larger opportunities in this country that are only really afforded to those who are white. And I think that plays very largely into the way that Jews are perceived generally in this country, because it also plays into like this Jewish exceptionalism, concept. Like the Jews have succeeded and therefore like, I don't know, certain things do or do not apply. But I also think that I have experienced seeing the Jewish community, that which I grew up in, also being able to weaponize their whiteness and their success against like accusations of racism or just sort of different kinds of prejudice.
How do you think about the balance between assimilation and maintaining and preserving tradition?
I love that we assimilate. And I think that I personally view that as a good thing. Because we're experiencing this new wave of anti-Semitism, it's actually bringing us closer to our Jewish identity. And I'm hoping that Jewish Americans take this opportunity to strengthen their connection with each other, despite all of our differences, even at this table, and assimilate while holding on to our history. I think it's possible. I think that's like what the beauty is of this country.
Respectfully and sensitively, the most challenging thing to the Jewish people in America and the West in general is assimilation and intermarriage. And I think that the need to forget the traumas of the past and to assimilate and blend into the crowd and think that is something that will bring solace and normalcy to the experience is understandable, but it never works. So I think that the challenge in America for Jews is to feel a sense of place and confidence and a deep knowing that I'm in the right place and people will actually follow me if I lead.
I think to a degree, assimilation and tradition go hand in hand. Like I feel like my Jewish identity is strongest when I'm resisting assimilation, when I'm in an environment that is not so overtly Jewish or traditional, because I have to affirm my identity by being traditional. And I think that in some ways, maybe that's why so much innovation has happened in the Jewish community in America, because we're constantly dealing with this internal struggle of adapting and assimilating and being like everyone else, but still finding a way to hold on to our identity, to keep passing the torch along that has miraculously stayed alive for 3,000 years.
How are you thinking about your own life as a Jew in this country going forward? What might it look like? What are you thinking about?
I think about this all the time. I have a 1-year-old. I say to my husband all the time, he's going to experience Judaism way differently. My biggest fear is the things that go wrong in history, the things that go wrong in America. How are Jews going to be perceived in history? And that's the fear I have for my children, that it's going to look different. And I don't know what it's going to look like.
I think it's going to look very much the same, with less prejudice, hopefully, less bigotry and xenophobia. But Jewish life, Kiddush, Shabbat meals, holidays, Hanukkah, Purim, the high holidays will look exactly the same. The colors of hats and jackets might be a little bit different, but that's all very minute compared to the core of the tradition.
I would love to see a future in American Judaism beyond Zionism. And I think that there's a lot of beauty and there's a lot of diversity in the Jewish communities here in this country and the Jewish communities all around the world that exist and have predated the modern state and have predated Zionism as a political ideology and a tool. And I think that we will all outlive it as well. And I think it'll take time, but I think it's possible.
I think it's important for the Jewish people to be really aware of divisive cultures, even within ourselves. We know there are people who are anti-Israel and pro-Israel, and there are people who are Jewish who are anti and pro-Israel, and there are people who are not Jewish who are anti and pro-Israel. I think what's really important for us as a Jewish community is to not let ourselves be divided, even within those difference of opinions of what is going on in Israel-Palestine. And I think that's actually, I think that is something for the Jewish people to be very aware of and make sure that we do not get divided from our own brothers and sisters who we have difference of opinions on. I think that's one of the most dangerous thing. And time again throughout Jewish history, the more Jews argued with each other, the more vulnerable we were from all angles. So just recognizing that we're one culture, one people.
The Jewish people have always historically been, you know, extremely diverse, and divided isn't the correct word, but like spread out across all places and practicing in all sorts of different ways. And I think that to say that, you know, we are all one is partially true because we're united by like a foundational set of principles. But I think that oftentimes it's overwhelmingly a call to like abandon difference of opinion, to abandon political differences, to abandon like the things that make, at least in my experience, that are drivers of the culture in favor of some kind of like passive unification. And I think that I can only hope to see the beginnings of some kind of a breakdown of our ties, which are by design, but like our ties in this country to Israel.
I'd say for me, like my relationship with Judaism that I see going on into the future, because of what's been happening in the past few years, I've actually, because, you know, it's so interesting how the Middle East has such a profound impact and what's going on there in our personal lives, our true personal lives every single day in this country. That's actually made my connection stronger with the Middle East. And I, you know, I started Lamadati Rit Leklar Shana. I studying Hebrew, and now I'm studying Arabic. And I feel connection now to that region that I didn't feel, you know, a couple of years ago. And I want to just help create peace in that region. You know, we all need to learn how to get along with each other, and that's integral to who we all are in America. The Jewish people in America, it's all connected.
Even before the state of Israel existed, there were difference of opinions from Jews who were saying, you know, actually we should just move to another country. Totally. And it doesn't have to be the land of Israel. So we have always been a people who disagree. Back to our jokes on, you know, one community of two people is a community of three synagogues. Our Talmud is actually set in debates. Our most ancient texts are literally Jews arguing with each other.
Yeah.
We're filled with it. So we are still, in my opinion, very much one, and we'll constantly argue with each other. I argue with my parents, and my parents argued with their parents. And I think really the most important thing is for us to all love and accept each other. So I think the same way history repeats itself, I think us as young people relating to Judaism is constantly going to be the struggle.
I think that there's no doubt that right now is a very challenging time to be a Jew in America, but challenging times also create opportunities for leaders. And there's a lot of amazing young people also on the campuses and in the community who are stepping up. And optimistically, it'll be exciting to see what this next generation does and turns some of this, darkness into light in ways that we can't predict.
If you had 30 seconds to say to Americans what you would want them to know about being who you are as a Jew in America, what would you want to say?
I think I'd encourage young Jewish Americans and anybody else to embrace their tradition in love and unity. Learn how to revere a great ancient tradition that's been passed through many loyal and dedicated forebears, and to find a place where they can acquire it for themselves and add to it while strengthening the confidence of faith in God and love of their fellow Jew and neighbor, and to really just be confident about who they are and where they come from and where they're going. And to not only be confident, but know, specifically learn and study about that as well.
I think that America provides a very special opportunity to Jewish people in America, and really to anybody. We are able to exist here with the tradition and history of the thousands of years and the generations that came before us, but to do it in a country where truly anything is possible. And it really is a canvas or like a playground for Jewish identity, where we can express it in ways that it never could before, with a freedom that we never really had before. And so I think my words of encouragement or inspiration would be for everyone here to really seize that opportunity and to not hide your identity and not to live in fear, because unfortunately in many places that's the only option. And I think here we really have the opportunity to evolve, to reinvent, to maintain tradition, to share it in the broadest way with the world and with the rest of the country. So yeah, I hope that Jewish people in America really make the most of that and appreciate the opportunities that we have here.
Judaism is about community, and it's about service, and it's about bettering whatever space you're in. And I think that in spite of a lot of different things, I wouldn't want to be anything else.
Beautiful.